All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Podbrother Show. I am very honored to be here with my man, George Gallagher, who actually came in for the weekend for a wedding, brought the whole family in. And I said, dude, if you got a minute, stop by the Podbrother Nation Network and, drop me some industry wisdom of what you've been doing over the past few years. So, George, how are you, my man?
I'm good, Kimber. How you doing, brother?
Man, I could not be better, dude. I got so much exciting things happening, and we'll go into it later. But I'm super, super excited to see you and the little ones and the missus. And
Yeah,
man, it's been a minute. It's been
been a
a
while.
couple years since I saw you, right?
Yeah, it's been a few years. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I was here last year shooting a film, but I don't think you were around. I think we missed each other.
yeah, I think we did.
Yeah.
So tell me what you've been up to. What's been happening?
It's been busy, man. I've been really blessed the last year. There's been obviously a lot of changes in the industry, especially since the pandemic. But I was blessed. I got to work on a lot of good projects. This most recent one that aired was 1923, the Taylor Sheridan series. I was in season 2 premiere. It was amazing working with Brandon Sklenar and for Taylor Sheridan and our fabulous director Ben Richardson. One of the creative highlights of my life. If you watch the Yellowstone series or any of his films, Sicario, Wind River, Hell and High Water. I mean, he's like, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best writers in the world right now. Paramount was great. Got to spend the summer in Texas. It was a lot of fun. Had a great big fight scene. Everything as a kid you dream about as an actor. You're gonna get up and you know, you fight the hero, and hopefully you get to be the hero, so you don't get your ass kicked.
Right.
I wasn't. I got my ass kicked. It's to be expected. But some people said they thought I had him in a couple moments. If you've seen the show, he was great. He was a good guy. A lot of fun to work with, and I have a funny story actually I'll share about for those of you guys who are interested in fight stuff in movies and TV and stunt
No,
choreography.
absolutely, because
Yeah.
to make it look real, there's a lot that go into it. The choreography, the rehearsal,
Yeah.
you got to practice and blocking. Yeah, like so. Yeah, give us a story. Tell us a story for sure.
Everything that you see, whether it's a love scene, a fight scene, a stunt, it's like a dance. There's choreography that goes into ahead of time to maintain safety, and we had the best fight choreographers in the business. The stunt choreographer, they call him J-Rod, Jason Rodriguez is his name, I believe, and his team was incredible. A bunch of guys, Travis, Jake. Anyway, Mike Milan was my stunt double. They're really supportive. They can step in and do the stunts when you need to. So I went out. We did some rehearsals. Funny story. So actors tend to, you probably know, exaggerate things. Their age, their height,
Sure.
all sorts of things. Their credits, their resumes. And then the bigger you start to ascend, then you don't have to do that quite as much anymore. And then everybody gets modest and they act how modest you are. So it's kind of like the old quote from Bull Durham where Kevin Costner says to Tim Robbins' character, "You've got fungus on your shower shoes." He's talking down to him. He's like the young rookie pitcher, and Costner's the veteran, wise pro. And he said, "What?" He goes, "You have fungus on your shower shoes. He said, "How are you going to get to be a major leaguer if you got fungus in your shower shoes? Think classy, you'll be classy. And then when you make it to this pro and you become a star, you can let the fungus grow back and the press will think you're colorful. In the meantime, it means you're a slob." And so we're all trying to, do more or whatever. And so, preemptively, a lot of times when actors, they audition, it's not uncommon. They say name, height, slate, and whatever. And I always try to be truthful. I'm 5'10" barefoot on my tippy toes on a great day, which is pretty common for most actors, I'd say. Almost short and not quite tall. Average, just slightly above average height, and which makes, I guess, it easier to shoot around. So I looked up, Brandon Sklenar, who's the star of the series that plays Harrison Ford's nephew, and because I didn't want to say, oh, well, I'm doing a fight scene. A lot of times they cast them as big guys, and obviously I keep in shape, but I'm not, over 6 feet tall. So I looked up his height, and I don't know where the hell I was looking, but it said he was like 5'7", 5'8", and I thought, oh, like he's a, fairly small guy. Okay, so I'll just tell the truth. I'm 5'10". I'm only a couple inches taller than him, and I'm not going to tower over the guy, and it'll be fine. And I always really like those zero drop shoes. I don't care about being tall. I just care about being healthy and fit and feeling good. And a lot of times they sell running shoes now, and they're like, they have these heels that are like this, and it's like everybody's taller. And then all the men are walking around like pretending to be taller than they are now. And so, but I don't do that. It's like barefoot shoes, wrestling shoes, whatever. I get out there. All the fight guys are 6'2", 6'3", and I'm thinking this actor's going to walk out. And he comes out, and, he's like 6'3", and I'm going, oh my goodness. And I look at my phone, and it says he's 6'2" on the IMDb. And I'm like, oh, so he's probably closer to 6'3", because, usually if you're really tall, they average down because they don't want to be too tall. And if you're kind of short, people tend to round it up. I know actors who are like 5'9" that will say they're like 6 feet. I mean, it's ridiculous. And they will boots and anything to get a gig. It's such a tough business. So we start doing it, and it's like, the guy, he's a big kid. And I'm worried they're going to just be like, yeah, this guy's like, tiny. And I see it on camera, and, the shots that they text, he didn't look that much bigger than me, and surprisingly, the magic of movie making. And he was great to work with, and he could have been like a stuntman himself. He's got fight experience and lots of combat, and he had all these fights he did in the first season as well. But it was more brutal, visceral, bloodier. Season 2, they really wanted to bring out his character Spencer Dutton, who was this lion hunter in Africa that spends the whole first season getting his PTSD from the First World War hunting lions. And I play a World War I vet named Lorenzo, who's an Italian guy that works, in the ship going from Italy to Texas that he meets. And, we have like kind of a grudge match, sort of like a Fight Club sort of scene. And, we have a little kind of some repartee before we get into it, and kind of two lions sort of recognizing each other, and kind of we're both World War I vets, and there's some mutual respect. But it's like, the subtext is, I'm still going to freaking kill you, and we go into it, man. It gets bloody, but, it was great. The funny thing is, before we shot, there was a guy he fights before me that they called Big Man, and he was 6'5", dude with a shaved head, and like looks like Jesse the Body Ventura, like old school guy. He probably doubled for him back in the day. And this guy's got, he's like a war veteran in the movie industry. Terrific guy, and had great stories. The stunt guys are always the most interesting guys on the set. They're so cool and fun, and just they got stories. And so, they're talking, and we have this other scene before we get into my scene with Brandon, when we're sitting in the mess hall eating, and we're shooting the shit. And he said, if I'm working with an actor, I expect to get punched. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, Brandon's a really good fighter. And he said, yeah, man. He goes, those punches, though, he's throwing at you, one of those connects, it's game over. And I look at him and I'm going, I already broke my nose once boxing when I was younger. I was like, I don't need that to happen again. And I'm thinking, why would he hit me? Like, he's really good. He's like, dog, you don't understand. You guys are in acting class all day. You're working on Shakespeare and becoming a tree and all this stuff. We're in fight school. So, like, when I work with an actor, I expect to get punched. So, he said, like, Stephen Dorff broke my nose and and he's like, I've had this happen to me and that, and they're accidents because they don't know what they're doing, and they're stunt guys. And then inevitably the camera starts rolling, the juices are flowing and adrenaline. And I'm like, oh, shit, this isn't good. Like, this guy's like 225 pounds of muscle, and he's 6'3". Like, he's a big kid. I'm 5'10" and 175. Like, you put me in a movie, I'm going to kick your ass. But, like, in real life, I'll do okay, but I'm looking where to run. You know what I mean?
At
like,
$175, you're like, wait a minute.
I'm hoping to stay around and my speed is going to keep me alive more than anything. And maybe I get lucky and knock somebody out with a couple punches. But, anyway, so, yeah, dude. And you could feel that. And then, and there were things like where I take him into a wall. And, originally we choreographed it, and I hit him, he hits me, I fall back, and I come at him, and I drive him into the wall. Well, when we're shooting, he hits me, I go back, and it's all as planned. And then when I'm supposed to come at him and drive him to the wall, he starts coming at me, and it's like two linebackers, like two Rams going. Now, 5'10", 175, 6'3", 220 or 225. And so each time I hit him, it's like hitting a Mack truck, and it's like, and he's not going, he's like taking it easy. He's really mindful. He's a beautiful actor. He's a great guy. And, but he's big, so like I stop him, and then now I got to work against his force, and he's probably going really mild on me, but he's big. So I got to move him, and then we go into the wall, and we do it again, and and it's like fun. And then after a while, you're like, wow, I'm feeling okay. Like, I'm tired. And so they're like, take a break. We're going to have the stunt guys do it to catch it. And they have this kid who looks like me, but like 1,000 times more shredded and probably 10 years younger than me. He comes in, and, I knew he was my stunt double. As soon as I walked in, I see this Italian looking kid who's like 5'10", jacked and ripped. And I'm like, you're the guy who's come here in case I fuck this up, right? And he goes, yeah, basically. Because, they're like, if the actor can't do it, they try to give you the chance because it'll look good, but we got a guy to cover who's a professional and whatever. So they're probably hoping to get to do it, but they were supportive. They encouraged me. They gave me coaching. They spotted me. They wanted me to do it. They knew that was what I wanted to do, and they supported that, and it was fantastic. But, so he shoots now the scene just so they have coverage, right, of the fight doubles. So Brandon's stunt double goes in to do it with my stunt double. And Brandon's stunt double is also the fight choreographer, Jake, who's amazing. And he helped me out through the whole thing again. Couldn't have been more supportive and clear. And these are the best guys in the business. I mean, they're spectacular. So I see them do it, and when he tackles him, takes him to the wall. And I remember at one point I heard this like sonic boom because the reinforcement, the wall on the inside of the ship, I think it snapped or something. Like one of the reinforcements cracked in the wood, and it echoed through the soundstage. And it was so violent. And it was just like, it was just shockingly violent. And it was so real. And I looked at it, I was like, oh my God. And this is after 2 hours of filming. It was bloody. It looked like a real war. Like they were killers. And Brandon and I are standing there in Video Village watching it next to each other. And we're looking at the monitors. And I'm looking at him, and he's like playing with his mustache. And he's real focused. And he's got that like Tom Cruise look in the eye. Like, like, how can we do this and do it better? And I'm going, yeah. And I look at it, and I was like, wow. And I look at him, I was like, all right, I guess we can call it a day. We can go home. Like, these guys, we can't do better than that. And he's looking, and he goes, all right, I know. And I heard him talking to himself, and kind of goes, yeah, I know what to do. All right. And I see he's got that Tom Cruise look in the eye, and I'm like, oh shit, we're not going home. It's gonna be a long night. I was like, if he's not gonna pussy out, I'm not gonna pussy out. I was like, he's the one getting taken to the wall. So, all right, I guess we're in for a while. So we kept doing it, and 2-3 hours later, we got the scene, and it was great, and it was one of those things, and we had a good time joking about it the next day. And,
that's awesome, man. That sounds like so much fun. It's like I think like the female actors want to always be like the honeypot of the scene, and the guys always want to like kick ass or do something that just looks like physically epic. And fight scenes where either you whooping ass or you getting your ass whooped so it looks real is a real high.
Oh yeah. No, it was just like, dude, it doesn't get any better than that. I remember like choreographing a fight in acting college and drama conservatory. Like, we had a fight night, and we did like a James Bond thing, and it was like the most fun I had all semester doing anything. And for years that was like a thing I wanted to do. Funny thing is, so on that note about having the honey, we were supposed to, I think the way it was written initially, it said that like, I see the guy, and I do one of those shirt off moves and walk up to him, and like we're gonna throw it down, and we have our dialogue. And so I had a lot of attention. I think that between the time I shot and the time I found out I booked the job, I had like, I don't know, 12 or 14 days. And I'm like, oh man, I got to get in really good shape. I'm going to, have my shirt off. No dad bod allowed. It's like, I'm texting all my friends that are actors at work, my friend Holt McCallany, who's in Mission Impossible. I'm like, Holt, I got 12 days to get off, to get ripped. What I do? He's like, texting his trainer. My friend Sal Kincassi, who's a trainer. Like everybody, I'm aggregating data on how do I do this in 12 days. So I'm busting my butt, and Brandon and I were talking about it, and he's like, yeah, he's been working out through the whole off season, and we're like swapping notes and cracking up. And then we show up after, the fight rehearsals, and when I come back to actually shoot the scene, a couple weeks later or whatever. And, I find out now from the costumers that I'm going to have my tank top on. And I'm like, dude, I've been like practically starving myself. No carbs for 2 weeks, training 6 days a week, fighting. You know how it is, Steve. You remember.
Sure. Yeah.
I remember you did that, your challenge a few years ago. And, and then he's like, yeah, I think they want us to keep our tank tops on. It's not the look that they want. I was like, well, I get it. It's not that kind of show. I get it. We're going to keep it masculine, keep it traditional. I gotcha. It's something about two guys with their shirts off fighting, and
that's
like,
funny.
Beefcake could have, unintended innuendos, possibly. And he didn't say anything. He just smiled at me, and I was like, all right, you don't have to say it. I will.
I mean, I totally can relate to that, because when I did the Nordic Track Challenge, we worked out for 12 weeks. I did get in some good shape. I lost like 37 pounds, but they wanted me to do can you go on the high board and do, a spectacular dive, multiple somersaults? And I was like, I can try.
What? Wait, did you? Was that what you did? Were you a diver in high school or
Yeah,
something?
I was a diver at the audition. They're like, so, what are some of the things you used to do when you were younger that maybe you'd like to do again? And my dumb ass said, yeah, you know what? I was a competitive springboard diver, and I'd like to get back on the boards. And they looked at each other, and they saw like this 50-something brother like on a high dive, and they all lit up like Christmas trees. And then I see they did the whisper together, and the director, producer, and the marketing director from Nordic Track, they all kind of powwowed, and they're like, okay, can you come back on Monday? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I go back, and I'm not thinking, that I'm actually going to have to dive.
Right.
I'm thinking, okay, I'm ripped a little bit. I lost 37 pounds.
Dude, you look great.
I could just go on a mic and say how much, I lost, and maybe tell the story about that. Follow me doing some stand up is what I kind of wanted them to do, is to follow me around doing stand up in good shape. They're like, okay, so we booked a permit for a pool that has a diving board.
Oh shit!
Are you okay with going out and throwing some dive? And I could not say no.
Oh shit!
I couldn't say no, so I was like, oh snap. So now I'm going out and hitting pools and just knocking the rust off of any dive that I can do off the high board. And lucky for me, I took about 3 weeks, and I went out probably 5-6 times a week and just dove until I got respectable. But it wasn't a complete dive.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came time to shoot, they're like, okay, you think you can do this? I go, hey, listen, here's how this is going to go. I probably have about 20 dives in me total. So you're going to have to do some Hollywood magic and cut it together. I'll go on that high. I'll go on the 10 meter, and I'll do just like a dive in the water and give you a nice clean entry, legs straight, toes pointed, and you have to shoot that. I'll go on the 3 meter. I'll do a nice, sweet 1.5 at the apex, with the sun in the background. But the landing is going to be ugly, and the takeoff is going to be ugly. And then you get me doing a nice, clean takeoff on the board, nice approach. But there's going to be no dive. There's going to be no entry. So if you guys can patch it together to make it look like one dive, then I can do it. Otherwise, we're going to be here for 6 months, me trying to put it all in one. And they're like, yeah, we can do that. We can do that. So I basically patched together a 1.5 somersault off the 3 meter, and that's what made it into the Nordic Track commercial. So, movie magic, you don't realize how much work goes into and how many times you gotta. That's why when you put something on your resume as an actor, you damn well better be able to do that.
Oh, yeah.
So many productions how much money have they lost when you put down there, horseback riding, and you don't even know which end of the horse is the head, and then all of a sudden you gotta ride a horse.
Yes. Oh, it's so. I mean, I'm writing right now in Atlanta, and I wrote a little bit as a kid, but I was never like an expert writer. And now I'm really working with a special horse camp for actors in Atlanta, up in Canton. And anyway, Tim Sabatino, great guy, and his wife April, they run it, and there's just so much to learn. There's so much to learn, and so many things you take for granted if you're not familiar with being around horses. You're dealing with an animal that's 1,200 pounds. It's like they're very much alive, and they know if you command respect and if you're comfortable being around them, and they know if you're new, and they'll test you. So
they will
very quickly. If you don't have an experienced trainer around you, things could go awry quickly. So an actor lying and saying they're advanced equestrian or even intermediate, you can tell very quickly if they're not, and that can be a huge liability. I mean, and when you start to connect with the animal, have you ridden horses before?
Yeah. I grew up with horses, so anything a horse can do to a human, except for obscenities, guy kicked, bucked, bitten, booted.
Really?
I've had we had horses for about six years, about 9 of them that came and go throughout that time. And
where was this? Where did you grow up again?
I grew up on my grandfather's farm in Indiana.
Oh, in Indiana.
Yeah, just outside of South Bend. There was like a rural area in between South Bend and on your way to Chicago. And my grandfather had horses and a farm and chickens and dogs and all kinds of stuff. So it was fun. It was fun.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I did was no saddle, no bridle.
Oh.
Just get on the horse bareback, grab the mane,
Mm-hmm.
and just give it a kick, and just wherever it goes and however it goes, you're just hanging on.
That takes confidence. That's for sure.
And that was a trip. It was fun, but when you're young and daredevilish, and and I had a really good relationship with the horse at the time, and I knew what the horse would do and some of the tricks, and because sometimes they try to scrape you off, and you kind of know what they do if we would go all the way to the end of the property, take the saddle off, take the bridle off, and then he would just go straight back to the barn. But it wouldn't be just a straight shot. It would be jumping ditches and going through trees and bushes, and he had a little thing. We had a little game, how to scrape me off bareback, but I won most of those rides. I say most because he did he did knock me off a couple times.
Yeah. Wow. That's I guess you know how to land too, huh?
Yeah, well, when you're young, you can land pretty easy.
We're like Teflon.
You can bounce.
These bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, you're running through a cornfield. Some of the dirt is soft. It's not as hard as it looks.
Interesting.
It's not like it's concrete. Had I landed on some concrete, I probably would have gotten hurt. But
yeah,
going through some cornfields, just plowed is not that bad.
Yeah. So we were talking about changes in the industry earlier that got me into this whole fight story. A lot of actors, for people who are watching this that aren't in the industry, many of us, we get jobs just taping on our phones or in a studio with people that we don't know. They're looking at us in a vacuum, and then you're on set days later expected to perform in it, and that's really can be all it takes sometimes. And it's interesting because you're working in this, like I said, this sort of vacuum, whereas actors I think used to go into rooms and they would meet people in audition, and now they're still doing they'll do callbacks, but everything's virtual, it's on computers and whatnot. So it's really exciting when you get to go on set. Funny, just kind of backtracking to what I was talking about before. So I don't really get injured that often, but I had this weird bout of back pain for the first time in 6 or 7 years recently from doing nothing. It was embarrassing. It was a silly workout, calisthenics, nothing crazy. But it was really bad. And I text this chiropractor that my wife had seen in Georgia, and I said something about, I'm in bad shape. I don't know if you have anything this week. It's Friday. And he said, that's what happens when you fight Spencer Dutton on Yellowstone. And I laughed, and I thought, here, I did this 3 weeks, 6 months ago. Nothing happened to me. And here I am doing some kind of yoga stretching thing with my kids and in the wrong way. And I tweak something, and now it's I can barely get out of bed. It's sort of embarrassing, amazing how complex our bodies are. But you and I were talking before about, the whole kind of culture of artists, art meeting commerce in Hollywood, and Instagrammers and people wanting to see their name in lights and be on camera and kind of leveraging their youth and beauty for jobs, and how it's changed so much in the sort of post, whatever you want to call it, cancel culture world before, which I thought was really interesting. I don't know, would you be open to talking about that a little bit more? Because I'd love to hear.
Yeah,
I was really interested in what you had to say about it, having been to Cannes and been around, and all the
it's there's so much in the news about what's happening with the power play in the industry, and obviously power corrupts and is intoxicating. And there's going to be some corruption and some exploitation that comes with some people that don't have good intentions, and they have some pretty ugly hidden agendas. And being a comedian in this industry for 40 years, working Chicago and then into Boston and then New York and now out here, I've had a chance to witness some behind the scenes toxicity in the comedy industry. So when I hear about it in music and I hear about it in film and TV, I really understand what's going on pretty thorough. And you know, I'm like this black dude who, is not centerfold. I'm not a baller. I had my moments when I was younger here or there, but when you're a beautiful woman trying to make it in the industry, I feel for you. I mean, seeing what I've seen and knowing what I know, that is you have to have some tough skin. You got to have some balls. You got to stand. You got to know what you stand for. You got to stand for something so you don't fall for anything. And we were kind of talking about it earlier. I'm going to the Cannes Film Festival and industry parties and up in the hills and just all these places where in New York where there's an opportunity for power to exploit. You see some stuff, man. So when you hear it, it's like, okay. Now, in my observation, George, I have seen a lot, and there's kind of a spectrum, and I'm not categorizing or generalizing, and I don't want to, sound like somebody who is looking at women, as an object. But I've seen some stuff. There's a spectrum of women. There's women out there who are just totally nymphomaniacs, and it's all about the swinging sausage. And if the opportunity comes with that as a byproduct, that's great, that's cool, but that's not the focus.
Right.
And then you have some women, and men. I don't want to generalize women, but there's some good looking guys out there who are in that same kind of lane, in that void where they're so attractive. It's just people who don't even think about trying to exploit, will take up and step up and take a shot. But you have women who and men who, okay, they want to leverage their attraction, that sexual attraction, to maybe get the attention of somebody with some power, some wealth, and some fame, and maybe try to leverage that through heavy flirtation and maybe even following up on some advances just to see where it can go. And then there's this next group that is like, they're flirty, but they don't really try to leverage it because they don't want to put themselves in a situation where it's a mixed message. So it's flirty enough to get the attention, but it's not so flirty that you can take it the wrong way.
Right.
Because you're still trying to get an opportunity. You're trying to get work, trying to get a job, trying to get cast or whatever. You're trying to get, the hookup. And then you move down a little bit further where you have people who, they have talent and they're really going for, like, based on what they can deliver with their talent, and they have a little more solid sexual ground to stand on, and they have a little bit more of a filter to filter all that out. And then you have the extremely talented people that they're so talented and they've got that special gift. Even the toxic, most heinous person will recognize, what, they're just too good. And I'm not even going to try to even contaminate this with any kind of like move or exploitation, because they're good. So we're going to cast you.
I want to interject on that for a second, if I can.
Yeah.
You reminded me of what you just said. They're so good, that lane. So I had very early on when I was just starting out, like just out of drama school, and I went to a school that was good. I had a really good experience, but it wasn't one of the necessarily, I'd say, the top, the big ones like Yale and Juilliard, NYU, that sort of thing. And I had a manager that I found who had been pretty successful. He had a bi-coastal talent agency, and now he was a personal manager, etc. And he was kind of one of these guys who dangled the carrot in front of young people. And, there was stuff at one point without getting into it. But like I said, I'm a volunteer, not a victim. I'm a grown adult, and I was then, no matter whether I was in my early 20s or not, I'm a man. And, he made an advance at me, and I declined respectfully, and it didn't end very well, unfortunately. But he did teach me some good things. And I remember years later, I actually wrote to him in the post-Me Too thing. And I said, listen, I take full responsibility for putting myself in a bad situation. I knew, what his kind of, preferences were. And that, I recognized he was kind of making advances. And I should have been harder and more firm in terms of my position in space, and that I wasn't going to be okay with that. I did make it clear that I was not interested and I was straight and that wasn't my thing. But the fact that, again, you have dinner with somebody, if there's wine involved, those sort of things, it's not a responsible thing that you do with someone that is probably attracted to you, probably has ulterior motives. Regardless of what you say, they just think it's lip service. So I said, I'll own my part in that. Probably not a great idea. So, it's not all you. And he wrote back to me. He goes, it took a lot of courage for you to write that email to me. And the reality was I was there because I was hoping for an opportunity, and I was aware that this person was attracted to me and was flirting. And, and I probably could have been firmer. And I knew probably if I had been too hard, that would have disconnected the relationship earlier on before I got what I wanted, which was, more opportunities, etc. And so, but obviously I had a bottom line, and thank God I have integrity, and I get to sleep good at night because of that. But he said to me something, and I didn't put it together early on, but he said, if you went to one of those schools, Juilliard, NYU grad, or Yale School of Drama, or Carnegie Mellon, whatever, I think Juilliard has a 2% acceptance rate out of the 3,000 people that they see a year. I actually was a Juilliard rejectee. I auditioned once, and they called me back, and then I had follow-up interviews, and they sent me a letter saying they only called back 80 people that year out of 3,000. And so I should feel good about that or something. I was not feeling good about it. I was very unhappy that I didn't get in. but, and then I understood, they explained to me, it's like they're creating an ensemble, and they have 2 of each type, and it's so they could do productions throughout. But he told me, if you do go to one of those schools and there's 7 people you meet, or 10 people you can meet, only 3 can really help you. The 7 that pretend like they can help you, they sort of fall away and disappear because you went to Juilliard, Yale, and NYU. They know that you're not going to be interested in what they have to sell, and that you don't really need them. But if you didn't go there, you have to sift through these sort of pariahs, these predators that are out there looking for young, desperate, hopeful, attractive people who are looking for an opportunity, and they're looking to leverage more than, they're expecting them to leverage more than just their talent for them to help them get where they want to go. And, it's like you said, there's this balance in these categories of, are you a volunteer, are you a victim, and how culpable are you in your victimization in trying to get where you're going? If you have an industry and a culture that for decades has fed upon the casting couch and the hopefuls, whether it's music, and we're talking about, of course, everyone's talking about this Diddy trial, which is horrific, but again, with all these situations, these things that break, we're living in a time where as soon as there's a scandal or even an accusation, everyone's afraid and nobody wants to touch you. It's like going back to Paul Schrader's American Gigolo.
Right.
As soon as the guy is framed or arrested and suspected on a murder charge or whatever, it's done. Nobody wants to be around him. He's he's treated like an outcast, and you're guilty by suspicion. And Johnny Depp, that was a different story. He had a similar problem, and then of course people saw the courtroom trials and the truth came out, and it was one of the rare situations where the pendulum started shifting back in the other direction.
Right.
I remember talking to someone right after Me Too started, who was an attorney and an entertainment lawyer in Los Angeles. She said, listen, women have been exploited for decades. Even she admitted herself, she had a boss that would inappropriately pat her on the tush or whatever, and they went to dinner, their spouses knew each other and everything, but occasionally he would make comments or rub the shoulder, like weird, gropey kind of flirty things that just he thought he could do because he was a good-looking guy who was rich and had a lot of money, and she worked for him. And she said, you didn't mind those things though, right? I mean, I don't understand what's going on with women these days. And she said, I told him actually I did mind. He goes, why didn't you say anything? She said, because you're my boss. You're afraid I would like fire you? She goes, I don't know. And that's the position that women were in for so many years, which is really tragic. And
Yeah.
so I'm so happy that they're now empowered. But she was saying what you're seeing is an overcorrection. So now it's to the point where if someone's even suspected of being inappropriate or invading somebody's space, they get labeled, as being, a creep or a pervert or whatever. And it's, there has to be some sort of balance in the middle. I'm hoping things are going to like sort of shift back, or at least, people will take a look at these cases and listen to both sides and understand that,
Well, there needs to be, I mean, the fact that these situations come out in the open to even start the dialogue so people can find, that middle ground with each other, I think is good. Unfortunately, it's crazy, and you have, there's a lot of people that have fallen through the cracks. But I think to get the dialogue open, to get the conversation going, to get people to understand what's out there. I mean, let's face it, there are predators, male and female. I mean, I've been in situations where I've had female bosses, come on to me, and I'm in a situation like, okay, I didn't see it as a sexual advanced exploitation because I was just young and stupid and didn't, I didn't understand it. But back in the day, that really didn't exist. Like, nobody really talked about that as it being an issue. It was just, somebody hit on you and you were like, okay, what do you do about it? And if they're your boss, like, okay, that could get weird. But there wasn't kind of like a Me Too movement, or there was talk, or there was anything in the news or in the paper. It was just kind of an unspoken thing. If your boss hit on you, what would you do about it? And until it happens to you, you're just like, okay, so what do I do? But with the comedy world, I mean, for me, it wasn't a lot of sexual harassment. It was more like heinous task, rat hole, go bring me, some weed, or bring me some heroin, or deliver some money. You want stage time, you want to get booked, you want this, you want that, do this thing for me. That was kind of a rat hole task. And I'm like, no, I'm funny, and I'm not doing that. And you find yourself losing opportunities, really, really good opportunities, because you're not that person who's going to do that. It's like, nah, I'm good. And then fast forward the tape, 10 years later, 15 years later, 20 years later, you run into some of those comics and they're like, man, you had it right, dude. It's like, I did some crazy stuff to get stage time and ended up with an addiction, ended up, doing things that I can't even look myself in the mirror now. It's I can't sleep. I have issues. I have emotional issues. I have this. I have that. Man, because we would talk about some of these things, and back this, like, man, I'll do anything to get famous. I'll do anything. Like, you kidding me? It's like, you got offered to do, a Florida run with these 10 gigs, all paid, and all you had to do was just carry like bricks of money from New York to Miami, and you could just do comedy clubs along the way and get paid. It's like, what's wrong with you? Like, that's what we all dream. I'm like, nah, bro, nah, that's not me. And people have lost their lives. People lost their careers. People have lost, their mind, their emotion. They lost their way. They lost their sanity. And my grandfather, he raised me. My mom died when I was 13, so my grandfather raised me, and he was like, when I'm too old to be disciplining you and to be constantly telling you what you can and can't do. Based on the Bible, you're an actual man now, so it's, there ain't too much I can really do but read you a scripture through the bars if you get arrested. So you basically gonna have to use your common sense, your wit, your sense of what's good and what's right and what's wrong. It's all in there, built in, instinctual. If your instinct tells you something's not right, you probably should listen to it, and you're on your own. And those were probably some of the best words I heard as a 13, 14-year-old, because then it puts it on you to understand what you need to do when the peer pressure is on and somebody is coming on to you don't want to, or wanting you to do things you don't want to do, or and it was one of these things where I remember those words as I got into the comedy industry, ringing in your ears. You better stand for something or you'll fall for anything. So I went into the industry with a bottom line, knowing what I would and would not do in just about 30 different lanes. And as it came to me, I instantly was like, nope, I'm good.
Yeah, and I think that I remember seeing another actor who eventually ended up on one of these lists, but he said, a really great stage actor and film actor, like a statesman, older veteran actor, and he said, it really comes down to the bottom line is how much shit are you willing to eat? And that's in any industry, not just the entertainment industry. You have a job, and you have to walk through fire and do all these things and deal with all kinds of realities that are different from yours, and sometimes screamers and abusive things and hotheads and and are you willing to do that? If you can, you can sleep, lay your head, clean hands make a happy life, as the saying goes. You can sleep good at night. If you can't, you can't. Even if you are one of those guys who does the money run and gets the 50 comedy clubs on the way, what does that say about how you feel about your comedy if you had taken that it's not quite good enough, so I have to sort of cheat, or I got to do something out of my integrity to do that? Whereas going back to my Yale, Juilliard, NYU, most of those kids there, they went there because they're artists, and they dedicated 3 years of their lives to training at some of the best institutions we have out there, to compete at the highest level in this industry, and to do it based on the art, not about fame or how many followers they're going to get, or how much noise or attention, how many 15 seconds we can grab from the universe. And and they get rewarded for that, which I think is really great. I mean, I still have to believe that talent wins out in the end. And my teacher, my mentor, Harold Guskin, really great acting coach, taught some really like creme de la creme artists, some of the most gifted people we've ever seen. I could drop names on the floor all day, but anyone's interested out there, look up who Harold Guskin was. But he told a friend of mine, and he said similar things to me, but that as an artist, you have to believe that you're going to get an opportunity, and and that talent does win out at the end. And if you believe that and you do the work, eventually you will. And you have to be an optimist. If you think about the unemployment rate, or AI coming, which that's a whole nother thing, or whatever the newest concern or fear is of the statistics, or how hard it is, and all this stuff that you hear when you go out and talk to people and they ask you if you're not an A-list actor, they assume you're driving for Uber or something, and that there's anything that's honorable. I mean, that's brave, or waiting tables or bartending or whatever the jobs are that actors have to do to survive. And they say it sort of disparagingly, like it's a put down if you drive for Uber. Like there's nothing dishonorable about that. You're taking care of yourself and taking care of other people. But there's this idea that somehow you'll never get an opportunity, and that you have to go to the parties and be in the in crowd and go on the red carpet. And he said, you think that that's how you get in, but if you go to the red carpet, it's to have a good time, have a great night out, and get to dress up and have fun and play house. It's not because you're going to shake the right hands and being there, and that you're going to meet the person that's going to change your life. We get jobs by doing good work, and if you believe that, he said to me, just doing your work and being good at what you do automatically puts you in with the in crowd.
That's correct. That is correct.
But we are taught, and especially in the post-internet age, that it works differently. And because you do see people who are, doing things on the internet, and they get tremendous followings. Like we were talking about a podcaster today. I said, I don't get it. I don't think he's that bright. I don't think he's that funny. And for whatever reason, he appeals to a certain demographic, so he's got a lot of followers. So there are people who unfortunately do get rewarded for instant gratification, but what kind of legs is that going to have really in the long scram? Are they going to look back in history and we're going to remember this guy? Probably not. But are we going to remember somebody who's a really great artist? Are we going to remember a really great commentarian or a great interviewer? Larry King will live in for the ages, and Dick Cavett, and people like that. So it's a different thing, and I try to remember, like, I teach acting as well, as you know, and that's one of the things I'm always stressing with my students is you have to remember that Orson Welles said, as an actor, you have to be an optimist. You have to believe that you are going to get an opportunity. You really have to, otherwise it's like, don't do it. Kirk Douglas said that he knew that only 5% of actors would ever work and make a living, and he always assumed he would be in that 5%. They would ask him about it, and he said it never occurred to me that I wouldn't be. And conversely, I remember hearing Billy Bob Thornton, who I love. Billy Bob Thornton said people tell him you're really brave and you make bold choices as an actor. And Billy Bob Thornton said, "Are you kidding me? Like, I get paid a shitload of money to make a movie, or to make a TV series. There's nothing brave about what I do at all. You know what's brave? Driving a cab while you're trying to be an actor or waiting tables. That's fucking brave. What I do, that ain't brave." It's like, I got an opportunity, and fortunately I was able to make the most of it when they called my number.
Right.
You get an audition, you get whatever, and I've been fortunate. Like I said, I just can't help but use that word because
well, it's a lot of people forget, or actually maybe they're too lazy, or maybe they know but they just don't want to put the work in, and they're looking for the shortcut. They're looking for the, how can you make me rich? How can you make me famous? How can you give me a part in your multi-million-dollar production? And they don't, they're not looking at what they have, the work that they have to put in, the skin they have to put in their own game, just to be, as you say, good, so that you're recognized on the work that you've put in. And I remember comics in the early days would be like, you only been in this thing for a minute. How are you getting all this work? How are you getting paid? How are you getting these jobs? I've been doing this for 7-8 years and I'm not getting the work and the jobs and the pay that you're getting. How are you doing that? And I'm assuming that you're doing what I'm doing, and I don't know that you're not getting paid, you're not getting work. I'm assuming you're doing what I'm doing is going down and getting flyers and putting flyers in windshields in sub-zero weather in parking lots to come to my show, and then they actually show up.
Right.
And then I am smart enough to be like, okay, I know I'm not good enough for you to pay me, but anybody who comes in, can I get a piece of the ticket? And they're like, yeah, sure. You got people coming in to see you. I'll gladly rev share the tickets for you. So I'm bringing 50, 60 people to the show, and I'm getting a piece of the ticket. I'm getting paid. I just started doing comedy. I'm not a headliner. I'm not an actor. I'm not on a TV show. I'm not in a movie. I'm not on anything, but I'm doing the work. I'm going out there and hustling to get people to come into my show, and I just ask for a piece of the ticket. So you come in putting skin in your own game and, ask for a revenue share. They're like, oh, yeah, okay, this guy's hustling. I get the 2-drink minimum. Everybody that he brings in is bonus. Because he's bringing them in, and he's not a headliner. And so if you're not putting the work in, and if you aren't thinking outside the box of trying to get the booker to pay you and be like, well, wait a minute, I'll bring people and can I get a piece of the ticket, then that's on you. Like, you're not willing to put the work in, you're not willing to put your own skin in the game. And that had nothing to do with me getting on stage. That's just me out in the freezing cold, in those sub-zero Chicago super winters, and flyering cars and flyering people on the corner when you're getting blown across the street. And not a whole lot of people are willing to put that kind of work in. And with the acting, you got to take the classes and you got to do the workshops, and you got to put the work in, and they're not willing to do that.
Yeah. It seems like, and also what I've noticed is now I think we're also in an era now where there's such an emphasis on marketing and branding that people skip the actual talent cultivation part, like being good. You know, like, I heard Jason Alexander said that he's had plenty of actors come up to him and ask, how do they go about getting an agent? No one ever asks, like, how can I be good? How do I be a good actor, a really good actor, a great actor? And there are actors I know who do that, and they do really well. There's some great business and marketing coaches out there, and they understand about casting and branding and taking pictures and promo and social media, and they understand all those things. And so what they start doing is they start then getting a lot of auditions because they're really good at now marketing. But then they don't book any jobs, and they get really discouraged because they never really got really good. And then you have other people, unfortunately, who sometimes are extremely good, but they don't understand, let's say, the audition process, which is really how we get jobs. And they don't really understand how to market themselves. So maybe they get auditions for parts that they're never going to get because they're not right for, and their pictures don't look like them, that sort of thing. So you really have to, as an artist, you're the entrepreneur, you're the business owner, the marketing expert, the sales director, the accountant.
You're all of those departments.
The writer, the director, the producer of your organization. You're all those departments. Yes, sound person. With a self-tape, you're the sound engineer, you're the cameraman, cinematographer, lighting director, director, actor, AD. So, we're forced now to wear a lot of different hats. But, Robert Forster, who was an Academy Award nominated actor for Jackie Brown, the Quentin Tarantino film, and he was on tons of television shows, and great actor, terrific guy who I had the privilege to get to know. He told this incredible story about working with John Huston, his first professional job, the late and great John Huston, director of the 20th century. And he did a film with Marlon Brando and Elizabeth Taylor, and he said that he didn't give him any instruction until the day of. He said he had no film experience. He did one Broadway play, and he showed up, and he kept telling him, don't worry, I'll give you instruction the day of the shoot. It was a great story he told. He said that... it was a cattle call, basically an open call he went to at the Plaza Hotel, and his agent told him to fly to New York. He gets there, and he's at the Plaza, and he walks around, and he goes, and everywhere I look, I see guys who look like me. And he said, and I thought, oh my God, this is an open call. I can't believe I flew here. Well, my family's from Syracuse. I'll fly back and see my dad on the way home. And so he signed in, walked around in Times Square, signed in on the sign-in sheet. He figured he's already here. Came back 2 hours later, see where his number was in the line, and he goes in. And he sees John Huston. He says, he said, hi, I'm Bobby Forster. Before you say anything, I have no experience in the film industry. I don't know how they're made. I don't know what goes into them. But if you hire me, you will get your money's worth. And he looked at him, and he said, I didn't want to oversell myself. And he said, it's nice to meet you, Bobby. I'm John. And then he goes, Ray Stark, the film's producer, he calls him in the other room. He goes, I want you to meet Bobby. He's an actor. Tell him what you just told me. And he goes, yeah, Bobby Forster, no experience, I don't know shit, but you hire me, you'll get me my money's worth. And he goes, okay, well, we'll be in touch. Give him your measurements. And he goes, okay. So he writes his measurements down on a piece of paper, walks out, and he thinks, oh, it's a kiss of death. Flies to Syracuse, sees his father. As soon as he gets there, his father's like, you got to call your agent in L.A. They said, you're going to Long Island tomorrow. You're going to be working with Montgomery Clift and Elizabeth Taylor to work on Reflections in a Golden Eye for the next 3 months. And he's like, he couldn't believe it.
That's awesome.
And then Montgomery Clift, I don't know, something happened. He got in a car accident, and so then Marlon Brando replaced him. But so he gets the call. He says, you're to call him at this time. And they said, do you know who John Huston is? And he said, no. And he said, well, you should, because he's in the film industry, and he's a very big director. He's an important person. He's an icon. So he calls John Huston, and he's like, hello. And he thinks he woke him up, and now he's not going to get the job. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. He goes, is this Bobby? And he's like, yes. And he says, Bobby, welcome aboard, or something like that. He said, do you remember I am the guy? He thought he had the wrong guy, who said he doesn't have any experience in the film industry, right? And he goes, I remember. Don't worry. I'll give you instruction. And so Forster's like, okay, he's going to give me instruction. And so he gets there, wardrobe fittings, goes through all this stuff, and he says, are we going to have, you're going to give me the instruction? He goes, not yet, Bobby. So then they go out to dinner with the whole cast, and Marlon Brando's there, and he goes, when are you going to tell me about what I'm supposed to do with the part? And he hasn't seen the script yet, and all this stuff. He goes, not quite yet, Bobby. And so then they give him the script and whatever. The next day, he's supposed to start shooting, and he's terrified, like he's going to screw the movie up. And he's like behind the camera and the lens on the crane, and then he takes the loudspeaker and he goes, okay, Bobby, come over here. Now's the time. And so he walks up and he goes, and he says, I want you to come over here. And he goes behind the camera and he says, do you see this? And he says, yes. He said, do you see those lines inside the camera lens? And he says, yes. He said, okay, what do you want to put in there? And he looked at him and he was like, I don't know. And he said, in that moment, I realized he was giving me complete autonomy and control as an artist about what I wanted to communicate. He said, a scene has one arc emotionally. It has a beginning, middle, and end. It starts here and it ends there. And then you have another actor and you've got to give them a performance to support them and stay in communication with them. You've got the sound person. If you're too quiet, they can't hear you. If you're too loud, they have to adjust. So you have to, give it to them in a way that they can receive and communicates easily, that they can duplicate for the sound. You have to stay in the frame. You're not going to be in the movie. So you've got to hit your mark and understand where the light is. And if you have any business or behavior or props, you have to do that. Remember how to do it to match from one thing. And he said, and you can do that. And he dropped his pen in the air and he said, like physics, all in one motion. You can satisfy 7 or 8 different departments and you have X amount of shots per day if you want to do this for a living, and it can be done. He said, but you have complete control. And he said, I also realized in that moment that I can be totally causative and proactive over my experience as an artist and as a human being. Every person I come in contact with, I'm either adding to their happiness or I'm subtracting from their happiness. And he said, and I never forgot that lesson. And he said, and that's what we did for the next 3 months. It was like, I have a finite amount of shots on a certain day. I know what I want to communicate. I come in, I talk, I listen, I be there, I experience, and I'm totally in control over everything. And I think that, it was a really incredible story he shared with me, over a lunch in West Hollywood, some place that he used to go to. And then he came in and talked to my class and my students and shared these stories with me. And so I hope for those of our listeners out there that are hearing it, it does something to inspire you to know that, if you want to do this or you are doing it, always remember we are collaborating with other people in the camera department and the sound department and the directors, and everyone has a vision and we're collaborating together. But ultimately, between action and cut, you're there. The camera's on you. So your ass is on the line. So, you better bring it and you better be ready to throw down, and you better know that ultimately you're the one who does kind of call that shot. I mean, they can, of course, call cut, but then you just do it again and try to do the best that you can to satisfy all those departments.
That's awesome. That is great advice.
Yeah.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head, but that's a perfect example of somebody getting off the Greyhound bus and be like, what do I need to do if I want to make it in this industry? And you summarize it all in 6 minutes exactly. The nail on
Wish
the
it
head.
was my story. It was Forster's, but may he rest in peace. He's not here anymore, so I was it was a nice opportunity. I thought to kind of share something that he passed along to me.
That was beautiful.
And I've used it myself, on numerous sets. I mean, it can be really. I've been on $100 million shows and sets, and sometimes the more moving parts there are and the more people there are, the more opportunity there is for sort of confusion, and the faster things can move. And so you really have to be present and aware of what you're communicating. Like what you said, it's okay, you want an opportunity, you want to go on the road, and you want to do a show, and you're going to put flyers out, but what do you have to say as an artist? What are you communicating? What's your story? What do you have to say?
Yeah.
What are you trying to say to the world when you stand on that stage? I think all the great comedians, right? And tell me if you disagree, but they're social commentarians, really. George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Bill Cosby, Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, whoever, Chappelle, Jerry Seinfeld. They're not just telling jokes, but they really have a voice.
Right. Yeah, and that's very profound. And I have found in my career where, I've worked so many different audiences, from colleges and cruise ships and comedy clubs and corporate air shows. And what I have learned is to find yourself, find your voice, but have the flexibility to read your audience and understand that you're the person who's getting paid to connect with the people in front of you. How are you going to do that? And part of your job is to make that connection. And how do you do that? Because you can have the best laid message of all time, but if you don't connect, if you don't establish a rapport with the audience in seconds, and then use that rapport to build a relationship in minutes, it doesn't matter what you're saying. It doesn't matter how profound.
That was going to be my next question: is how quickly do you kind of suss out the audience to shift your material?
as quickly as you can. That's why I encourage all of my comedians to get there early. Watch people as they go in, read their body, what they're talking about, what they're drinking, eating, and there's this dopamine that is released in their brains based on how much fun they're going to have at the show. And if you can see that as they're coming in, that helps you put your show together. So I watch the comics that go on before you. If you're the only comic on the show, try to read the audience, listen to them, look at them, project into them, and you'll be surprised with that information. The choices that you will make to try to connect is because of that recon. And sometimes you only have a minute or two to do it. And, if you're lucky and you get there early and you can, take an hour or so or half hour before as people are coming in and try to read them, listen to the comedians before you, look at the demographic of the audience, male to female, young to old, black to white, and yellow, green, pink, and brown in between. It will help you. It will help you figure out, you have a joke, you have some material, and it works, it's funny, but sometimes you might have to deliver it in different variations in order to connect to the people that are in front of you. And one of the tricks that I've used over the years is to project some ideas that the audience might want to respond to in conversation. And then I go into the material. So if I'm doing jokes on dating and I'm looking for, if I see the audience has a lot of single people in it, then I want to find out who's on a date, how long they've been dating, first date, second date, third date. And then with that information, I can decide how I want to do my dating material, the dating jokes that I know that I work. But now that I've kind of went into the audience a little bit and made a little bit of a connection, built a little bit of a rapport, now I know what direction I want to go with that material. The next night, it's all couples that are older who've been married for 15 years. They haven't dated in 20.
Right.
And so how is your dating material going to work for them? And you go in, when you first met her, how did you guys first meet? So now you're trying to find out how they met, and then you're kind of retooling your dating material into a recall of how they first met 20 years ago.
Wow.
And they can laugh at dating material because you've now you've given them a flashback of when they first met, how they felt about each other, and that awkwardness and all those instant discoveries from somebody that you don't know. And now that you're married 20 years, you can laugh at that dating material.
Sure.
And, same thing if you got single people and you got married people and you're talking about, what's the success and failures of being married. Young people can't relate to that. But if you do it in a way where they can, relate to, oh, okay, this is what it's probably going to feel like when you're in a relationship for 10 years, 15 years, and this is what I can look forward to. So you're constantly in this, push and pull and give and take, and you have to be very observant. You have big ears, big eyes, small mouth, and absorb as much as you possibly can with every little detail, every little vibe that you can get to try to go out there and win them in seconds.
You just reminded me of something real funny about the 20-year thing. I remember when I was starting out, I did a regional commercial for a German car, a top, like Mercedes or something, for like a regional dealership. And I was supposed to be a couple, we've been together for a while and we're there. And, she's cute. I guess she thinks I'm cute, sort of thing. And you're shooting the commercial and, we're holding hands and everything. It's like drinking champagne. We get our car. And they kept saying, all right, you got to do it again. You guys have been together for years, It's like, you guys look like you like each other too much. And we're like, oh yeah, okay, well, we don't really know. Neither of us have been in a long relationship, It's like, I haven't had anything more than 6 months. We never got past the honeymoon phase. So I got to use my imagination now. It's like, all right.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was funny. But Are you finding also, Steve? I'm curious. With I hear a lot of the Seinfelds and Chris Rocks and all these people talking about how they find it's harder to like really do material on the college circuit now, and the kind of what we were talking about earlier in this post cancel culture kind of age, because these sound bites, even what we're talking about now, somebody could take what I said, mischaracterize it, or pull something out of context and think, oh, well, maybe he doesn't care about this person or this group, or doesn't like this or that, which couldn't be further from the truth. I love everybody, but
Yeah, there was a severe pendulum swing when the diversity movement and the Me Too, and the pendulum just did a severe swing to the left, and there was this sense of cancel power that people thought they had, and I think that rolled into a little bit of an abuse of power. I think if you make your point and you get recognition and you get noticed and you get a chance to communicate, if you go too far with it, then it's no fun for the people that you're trying to win. It's like, okay, if your push is to be included, you want to be inclusive, and then you get the authority and the power to create the world that you want to be included in, and then you exclude the people that that you were arguing with about being included. You just did the opposite right. of what it's like. Wait a minute, we thought you wanted to be in the party, and now that we invited you into the party, you want to cancel everybody who's there, who's been the reason why the party was fun, because these are the people who made it fun, and now these are the people that you want to cancel because you've got this axe to grind, you got this chip on your shoulder, and now that you're in a position of being recognized and put in a position of power and influence, you're using that to cancel everything. Mm-hmm. And that's not the fix. That's not the fix either. So with comedians, myself included, I found that, wait a minute, no, you shouldn't be canceling us, because we're the court gestures of the kingdom that is making fun of what's wrong with our society, what's wrong with the mob. We make fun of that so that the mob can chill. We make fun of the royal family and make fun of that so the royal family can chill. And this is our way of kind of like fixing, the abnormalities of society, is just be like, hey, wait a minute. You're trying to give us this propaganda that your group is cool or fun or better, but we're going to lift up the rug, pull the dirt out, and we're going to point at it, but we're going to make fun of it. And we want you to recognize that and be like, okay, you got us, you found the dirt, we'll laugh along with you. But if you triple down on the offense that we found your dirt, then that's not the point. Like, you missed the whole point. And when I was doing colleges, let me just kind of rewind the tape for you. When I started doing comedy, beer companies, Budweiser, Coors, Miller, were sponsoring spring break shows, spring break parties, spring break comedy. I won the Budweiser belly flop contest because I was a good diver. I did a 2.5 plop, and I won a keg. I'm 20. I'm 20 years old, and I'm not even old enough to drink, but Budweiser sponsored the belly flop contest in spring break for college students. The prize was a keg. So, you start your career with that. Fast forward to 20 years later, 30 years later, and you got this, this whole college cancel culture. And you just got to look at it all and be like, okay, yeah, I don't want to endorse college kids drinking, kegs over a belly flop contest, but I also don't want you to feel that you should be canceling comedians simply because you don't like their material or what you're saying you take offensive. A lot of times you're not even listening to the joke and you don't even understand who the joke is on. Like the joke is on the person who you're trying to expose as not letting you participate, and you're not even listening to it. You're just hearing trigger words, and those trigger words make you think the joke is on you or your people, and now you want to cancel them.
Right.
And unfortunately, there was a very severe rash in the college community on canceling comedians until it dried out. Like the Seinfelds and the Tuckers and the Chris Rocks, they all decided that, you know what, it's not worth the blowback. We're not going to do them anymore. And then you have like a half decade of just comedy that is trying to be so politically correct to where even the diverse community is like, this sucks. This is awful. It's like, but these are your people who are telling jokes and no one else can relate to. They're super inside jokes. And then a lot of who the jokes are on, they can't, the other opposite party can't laugh at it because it's too facetious. It's too, it's not a look at your imperfection to make light of it. It's more of a dig because you still are butt sore from, the whole not being included.
Well, it's definitely
campaign.
A conversation I've been having with a lot of people is, we're living through a time where obviously the lines are being blurred between free speech and what is perceived as hate speech, and it's really sometimes hard to tell the two from each other for many people. Like even I'm not sure that I fully understand what it is. I mean, I think obviously I understand if it's comments that result in a call for violence, that would be that's not free speech. I don't know if you call it hate speech or what you call it, but it's an instigation of violence. That's not something that can happen. But people argue and say, well, hate speech is a made up thing, and technically free speech is free speech. There's no restrictions on it, and you can say that too. But if it does call for violence, that's a problem. And we have a lot of crazy people in the world who don't need a lot of excuses to be violent or to be spiteful or extremely invasive, inappropriate. So we're living through and seeing, like you said, that course correction, and hopefully I'm glad to hear that the comedy world's coming back in colleges. That's good.
Well, now the college shows comes with a disclaimer at the front of it because they're just like, okay, we want these comics back now, but now it comes with the comedian you're about to see might have material or language that may not be something that you would agree with, but we're giving you a disclaimer up front to let you know that if it does happen, don't boo, don't jeer, just sit back and wait for some jokes that you like to come along, but don't disrupt the show.
How's that working out for them? Is it working?
Yeah, it is, because some comics are starting to come back now because it's really good money on the circuit. It really is good money. Yeah. So
I got to tell you a funny story. Like, there was a comedian I knew. I'm not gonna say who it was, but we were talking about they had all these jokes and they started going out, really funny, like Ricky Gervais sort of style humor. And then I can't remember what we started talking about, and somehow the subject of movie studios came up, and Mel Gibson and Clint Eastwood and all these things. And I don't know, I mentioned that Edward Longshanks, banished the Jews. He's the one who banished the Jews from England for 800 years or something. He was the king in Braveheart, it was threw his son off the balcony, whatever, by Patrick McGowan. And she said, the comedian said to me, well, she didn't know that I was Jewish at the time, and she said, well, he was like Hitler. He had a good idea, but he took it a little too far. I did not laugh. I gotta tell you, I did not think it was funny at all. And then they were like, no, I think people think I'm insightful and intelligent and whatever. I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. Like, that joke that wasn't even funny, man. I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a little bit, but like, you know, the conversation changed, and then when she found out, and then we started talking, and then we got in a political discussion, and, you know, we started going back and forth about other things, and Israel topic came up, and it was just, everything started going sideways, and I was like, all right, well, listen, you know, I'm not going to be hypocritical because I believe in free speech, so I can't, like, completely say I'm just going to, like, tell this person to F off because then I'm censoring their free speech, but that doesn't mean I got to like them, and it doesn't really inspire me to want to, like, work with them.
Well, see, I think that's a key point right there. I think, you know, what people need to understand, because I didn't really get it until I got into comedy. And one of the reasons I got into comedy is when I learned about Lenny Bruce and his challenging of the First Amendment, and I dug into what that really meant. And being a person of color who has had, you know, racial slurs and you know, derogatory terms and stereotype, and you're quick to take offense to it, but at the same time, it, like, they're communicating where they're coming from based on, you know, the color of your skin, and why wouldn't you want to know that?
Right.
So
That's a good point.
After listening to Lenny Bruce and kind of witnessing his challenge of the First Amendment, understanding comedians and the message that they have as a court gesture to keep the masses from storming the castle and the castle from slaughtering everybody, I realized that the power of freedom of speech is two ways. We should be in a society where you can say whatever you want, but it comes with the responsibility of knowing that everyone out there is going to say whatever they want. So you got to take, you know, you have to use your collective critical thinking and experience with everybody that you've witnessed saying whatever they want, and apply who is saying what, when, and why, and where, and who means it. You kind of want the dangerous, racist, fascist people saying what they feel, even though it's offensive to you, because you kind of know, oh, wait a minute, there's people out there who are actually saying how they feel about us.
Yes.
I don't want that censored. I don't want that filtered. I want to know who's out there saying what, when, why, and where. And because I don't like it, I don't think that's a reason I should tell you you shouldn't say it. And as a comedian, I've been like really, really diving into the real deal for the First Amendment, freedom of speech, but the freedom of ears, the freedom of critical thinking, the freedom to understand that there's some idiots out there that are going to say stuff you kind of need to know. You kind of need to hear. And you have to check your emotional sensitivities at the door, because you want to know who's saying what, and you want to know if they mean it or not. Are they saying it because this is how they really feel? Is this sarcasm? Is it irony? Is this a metaphor? Are these similes? Do you really have a serious issue? Maybe is this ignorance? You know, because a lot of people make jokes because they're ignorant, but they really want to understand. They just aren't hanging out with the right people that can clear the slate for them, that can clear the air for them. So they play along with people in their circle because they're trying to fit in, but they really don't sign up to what they're hearing. But at the same time, they're not exploring, you know, other people to understand where they're coming from. But if it were up to me, George, I would have a world where everyone can say whatever they want, but the world would have to understand that a lot of it is going to be something that you aren't going to be comfortable with, but you probably should know who's saying those things,
Yes.
so that you can personally put them in a Tupperware bowl that you know where they're coming from and you know what kind of people they are. And if they are spewing um, um, hate speech or inciting violence, you need to know that. I don't want those people going underground because they're going to be tagged as hate speech or they're going to be tagged as this or that. I want to hear what you have to say, and I want to understand why you're saying that. I want to hear what you have to say, but then I want to know, okay, how did you come to that? Because I don't agree with nothing you just said, especially the part about me, who you don't even know me. So I want to know how you came to that, and you don't even know me. And when we start evolving to the level where society can hear anything but then ask the how and why question, what's going to happen in my brain is people are going to self filter, because they have the capacity to say what they want, but because the society as a whole has evolved to the point to where they can critically think about your agenda, including your hidden agenda of why you said that. You're now, it's like walking to a room of aliens and they all can read your mind. Think about that. Let's say you land on the planet and everyone can read your thoughts. So you get, they can't be like, oh, your thoughts offend me. No, they're gonna receive it all, but then they're gonna be like, okay, this is what this person. But then if they can see your thoughts, they now know what you're thinking about how they're thinking.
Sure.
So now your whole thought pattern is going to change, because now people can read your thoughts. Except for we're not that evolved. We say stuff, and what we say is what we read, and we need to be able to have that alien type brain reading reaction to each other, and be like, you say what you want, but I know where you're coming from. I say what I want, you know where I'm coming from. That's my take on it.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, Kimbro, this was great, man. Thank you so much for having me here today.
It was fun, man. I could go for hours with you.
Yeah. No,
we'll have to do it again, because
definitely.
we haven't even gone down the AI rabbit hole yet, and I think we could probably go a couple shows on that.
Oh man, that alone is, it's definitely, it's coming down. I never think I refuse to agree with the idea that the human spirit will ever be replaced by anything. That's my
no way.
point, and I'm trying to. I just got asked to submit to a film festival for a short or something that I produced today in Europe, and I saw that they had AI shorts in their competition, and I told them I'm kind of boycotting festivals that are going to do that. So.
Well, no, you shouldn't.
Well, I don't want actors and all those people that work so hard. I don't want to see them being replaced. So, I think in commercials it's going to happen a lot sooner. I know a lot of background actors are selling their digital likeness. I know there are celebrities who are prepared. I heard Dolph Lundgren sold his digital likeness for, I don't know, a couple $100,000 or something last year. I personally want to continue to work as an actor, and I want actors, human beings, to not just be replaced by.
Yeah, but we can still do that. I don't see it as being replaced, because don't forget, we still can go out and shoot whatever we want, whenever we want, with whoever we want, anytime we want, no matter if there's a gazillion AIs out there. And if an AI can help brand me, can help my likeness, can help get me exposure and fans and sponsors and money, and I can go out every day and still shoot something practical with me, there's nothing stopping me from doing that. Nothing.
There isn't, but like, for example, my kids, they have no problem watching cartoons, or like, let's say, Pixar productions or things where you have an actor with a voice. I don't know that they could tell the difference between an AI generated voiceover and a human voiceover. They see an actor on screen, like live people. They don't. My son, like, and he's still very young. He doesn't have an overwhelming desire to see a live actor on a screen and go to the movies. He'd rather go see a cartoon. He'd rather see, a Minecraft movie or whatever it is. And so, as he gets older, we hope and that might change, but it might not.
But it will, though, because we all evolve into the next thing. And my opinion is anything live is going to be amplified. Anything live, sports, theater, stand-up, because there's going to be a point to where there's going to be such a standard of artificial entertainment, and you know it and you accept it and you see it and you're mesmerized by it, but the honeymoon is going to end soon, and when it does, you're still going to consume it because you've made it a part of your life and your digital device. But anything live, sports, to see live sports is going to take on a completely different thing because of the saturation of AI. Mm-hmm. Live theater is going to take on a completely different thing. Live concerts is going to completely stage show. And then anybody who's producing anything with real people, and that's at the beginning of the film. It's like everything you see is not artificial.
There's a disclaimer.
Then there's going to be a flip of that, and they
would have to pass some sort of legislation to require production companies to have that labeling or disclaimer. Is the thing.
I don't think it really needs it. I think based on what you said in your boycott, the fact that you are part of a demographic that really values practical shooting and live human beings, you're going to want to see that. You won't need a legislation for that. You're going to be like, I want to see film, I want to see TV, I want to see reality.
For a second, let's use Tom Cruise as an example. Top Gun Maverick. Okay. The big selling point that he would come out to all the screenings and say, these are real planes. There's no CGI in this movie. Real actors in real planes. Everything you see, the shots, the canyons, the mines, the mountains, the hills, these are planes going at Mach 1, Mach 2. They're real U.S. fighter Navy jets, Navy fighter jets, and real actors. And he wanted the audience to know what they did, and he's doing similar things with the Mission Impossible series. And so it's a niche so that audiences that have that appreciation for these things are going to feel that after we've been dealing with CGI since Jurassic Park, basically, and it's gotten more and more prevalent where the only things being produced are these Marvel films, which is great. I love Marvel. Their storytelling there's nobody who does it better. I mean, I would love to work for them. It's fantastic. I don't see audiences. I see filmmakers. I see the Spielbergs and the Scorseses and people like Tom Cruise and people like Ryan Coogler making movies and saying, we want audiences to come out. We want to save the cinema. They're worried cinemas die and everything's going to go to TV. So there's an audience, but they're like pushing to keep and hold on to like this thing. It's like record to CD to compact disc to 8-track. They're trying to preserve this thing. So there's always going to be like an audience, I believe, Kimbrough, for that, like you're saying. The question is that going to be a niche audience or is it going to be a major market? Or are they going to, I hope what I heard you say, if I understood that correctly, is like maybe the honeymoon phase with AI will come to an end and people will say, no, we want to see live things with real people.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I hope you're right.
I'm saying, like, don't panic. We've gone through these transformations before, and we are always going to have a very high appreciation and respect for anything live, anything practical, anything human. And it's fun, and it's exciting, and it's exhilarating to see technology that can do some amazing things, and we're always going to be wowed in the honeymoon. And there's still going to be some residual entertainment with what comes after the honeymoon. But don't get it twisted. We are still going to want that human connection of artistry. And, it's I think both worlds can exist, because when people are tired of human performances and they want to get way outside the box with some AI possibilities that could never be done by a human, then if you want to escape in that world, why not? Why shouldn't you be able to do that? And then if you get tired of that and you want to actually see real people doing real things because you're just overloaded with AI, then it's there for you, because people are still going to be doing live practical performances and shoots and filming and production and comedy and shows. I think I think we just need to not panic.
Okay.
Keep the keel that, okay, like you said, the human spirit will never be lost. Well, let's stay in that keel. And so if you're in that keel, it doesn't matter what the weather is, what the wind is. It doesn't matter AI, no AI, super AI, practical reality that sucks. Show if you're in that keel, you'll be able to look at all of it and pick what you want and when you want and be entertained how you choose to be entertained.
I love that, and I sincerely hope, and I'm gonna keep in my mind that that's the way it's gonna go down, because that's what I want to see happen. So
Yeah,
I'm with you on that. When I was when I worked on going back to 1923, and I didn't talk about even half the things that I was up to this year, but that's all right. We're not here to just plug stuff. But
well, here's what I want to do. I always put
yeah.
this out to a bunch of comedians and a bunch of writers.
Cool.
All right, I have this idea for a show. Because I'm doing table reads, I invited you to do a table read, and I think you got a wedding to go to. But because people were freaking out about AI and writing and scripts and that, I had this live show where the audience throws out a topic, and we have 4 writers, and the writers take that topic and they go and they write a short film, like a 10-minute film. But then we also have an AI write it. And then we come back and we do a table read, but no one knows who wrote what. So you have 5 names. You have these writers, and you have AI, and you have these 5 scripts, and then we table read with the same comedian, same actors, and then the audience gets to vote on which one they think is the AI.
Wow.
And let's see if 100% of the audience picks the AI script as the AI script, then we might be in trouble.
I was gonna say, what if they do? What do we do? We all go out and hang
then,
ourselves.
then here's what we have to do. We have to understand that we are now inferior to AI. But we still have a life. There's McDonald's number 1, Burger King number 2, Wendy's number 3. We have to, for the rest of our lives, realize as human beings, we will always be number 2 to AI. And in 5 years, that's going to happen anyway. So I wouldn't be boycotting anything. I would just be putting it out there and let people choose that they enjoy your short over the AI short, and not. I wouldn't. Let me put it to you this way: the opportunity to storm the castle, we missed in 1988. 88 was the last chance we could storm the castle and prevent what's going on right now. We missed that window, so now we just got to keel it. We just, no matter what happens, we just got to hang on to the human spirit, and we got to live in that lane, and that's how I see it.
Interesting. Well, it was a little before my time. I don't know what happened exactly in 1988, but
yeah, 1988 is when the recognition of the digital world was identified, and the race for artificial intelligence began. The race for artificial intelligence. And right then is when that, the debates and the arguments we are having right now needed to happen then. Mm-hmm. And then any legislation or legislation that needed to be inserted to prevent where it is now and where it's going to be in 5 years needed to happen then. Mm. And it didn't. So now the super AI is going to come in and actually create AI for the AI that humans could use, because humans aren't going to be able to even understand super AI.
Wow, that's mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing.
Well,
Yeah.
anyway, we could go for hours. Thank you so much, Kimber.
Thank you, too. Where can we find you, my brother?
Oh, yes. So anybody, George Gallagher, actor George Gallagher, I'm on the IMDb. I do also have those that are interested. I have a 90-day coaching conservatory that I do run a couple times a year. We do programs for artists, for actors, namely. That's at theactorsinstinct.com, theactorsinstinct.com. You can also find me on Instagram, George Gallagher, the number 7, just the number, George Gallagher 7 on IG, George Gallagher Facebook, GOGal7, I think on Twitter, 2 L's.
And can we take these classes like via Zoom?
They're virtual, yeah. So I started a 90-day virtual coaching sort of conservatory several years ago, and everything is virtual. I've got clients all around the world, in Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, London, Ireland. I've had people in Hong Kong zooming in. I mean, you name it. So it's great. And even as an actor, I'm a globalist in many ways now. And I did 2 jobs last year in Los Angeles, 1 shot in Texas, 1 in New Jersey, 1 in New York, and then worked on Tyler Perry's All the Queen's Men in December. That was in Atlanta. Also Perimeter we shot in Atlanta, and then the 6888. So
you were in the 6888?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
That's cool.
On that. I think this shot right here is from the 6888.
I did a podcast with Milana Jackson, who was in 6888.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I produced her podcast.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that film. It was a beautiful script.
It was very cool.
And
I did recognize you. I was like, that's my boy George.
Yeah.
Because I saw it, and I was like, oh, all right, my man's working. That's good.
Yeah, it was great, man. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, you can catch me, podbrother.com. You can catch this program on podbrothernation.com, which is my live stream network. And I launched Team Comedy USA leading up to what's going to be going down in Los Angeles in 2028. And I am very excited about that. Podcasts, film festivals, comedy shows. So check out teamcomedyusa.com. And if you want to get involved, you want to sponsor us, do a showcase, get on the podcast. If you want to submit a film, then you can go there and help us out. And let's make LA the funniest city of all cities since the beginning of the Olympic era. So that's my goal. George, thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with the Pod Brother. I really appreciate you.
You got it, brother. My privilege.
All right. Thank you, bro.
Man.